So, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Behind the Shield podcast. I'm your host today, Jason Shropshire, and I'm joined by our co host,
Gary Daemer.
Mr. Gary Daemer.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here again.
Yeah,
It's been a while.
It's been a while since we've talked.
It's been a while since we've
Just me and you.
talked. Yeah, exactly. On the podcast. We thought, this would be a pretty good episode for us to dive a little bit deeper into the world of the Department of War / Department of Defense, depending on where
Doing business as
doing
Department of
business
War.
as Department of War. And we thought we would try to maybe give some kind of challenges and struggles that we see companies kind of going through, trying to get into the into doing business with in this def tech space, defense tech space. And what I really like to do, if we can, is kind of talk about like what are our top 5 challenges that we see, trying to get into this business. Now, I know we talked a little bit before this, but we really didn't talk a lot before this. I think we have different perspectives on what the top 5 challenges are because the customers that you work with look at things maybe slightly different than the customers that I look at. And sometimes I'm looking at it from a pure InfusionPoints perspective and not from what do the individual customers have what they see as challenges within this space. So I'd love to hear from your perspective what you've seen, say, over the last 6 to 9 months to a year, and people trying to get into this market. What's the real struggle here?
Yeah. And I mean, we'll get into my top 5 and your top 5. I think there's going to be some agreement,
There's
some overlap.
There's definitely some overlap, but
But I think for me, going out, I mean, we got into this space mainly through FedRAMP, right?
Yep.
So we were supporting, customers going through FedRAMP. A lot of these are large, like tier 2 CSPs that are kind of right below the Azure AWS,
right,
GCP kind of level, but still very large in their own right. And, they have broad applicability to all sectors of government, right, including DoD and DOW.
Right.
So based on that, these customers are pursuing, while they're pursuing like contracts with DHS or GSA, they're also pursuing contracts with components in the DoD.
Right, because they have services that'll work in both spaces. Right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. And there's a very specific program for CSPs that meet that criteria that we got immersed in very quickly just through our FedRAMP work, and that's the DoD Cloud Computing Security Requirements Guide. Always a big mouthful.
It is.
DoD CC SRG.
That's what I know it as.
That basically exactly. That basically amends the requirements for FedRAMP. So, for a while, the only path was through FedRAMP Moderate, and then they bumped that up to also support FedRAMP High once that pathway came out. And, from there, you can get your IL2, which eventually they made just fully reciprocal to FedRAMP Moderate. And then they, have the moderate to IL4 path and the high to IL5 path. There's kind of the current recognized pathways to do that. And again, what we've seen,
so
a good number of our customers.
What is like the IL path? What does IL mean, and what's
impact
like
level?
Okay,
so,
and what's the difference between like IL4 and IL5? What's the big differences between those?
Yeah, basically there's additional requirements that come into scope when you go from IL4 to IL5. IL5 is very explicit about being the level where CUI can come into scope, right? Specifically, national security sensitive CUI, right? Mm-hmm. And there's been a lot of effort to make that very clear. In the latest versions of the SRG, the NSS is required. The NSS control
for IL5
is required in IL5. But it's always been the intent of IL5 was to cover those workloads that have national security implications but are still unclassed.
Right. Got it.
But yeah, from our customer standpoint, it's always been those that have, been going down the Fed Civ pathway through FedRAMP. And then they're adding on the ability to sell into DoD at IL4 and IL5. They're trying to work their way up the watermarks to sell at all different levels.
Right.
And then, from my perspective, my eyes opened up a lot going, we've been attending more AFCEA events and DevTech kind of events lately, and this year I had a chance to go out to AFCEA West in San Diego, and I was really what amazed me was how few of the folks that I talked to who provide some software of some kind to DoD, DOW, how few even really knew about the DoD CCSRG process.
Which is the only one that I ever knew about in the very beginning of all this processes, right? So
Right,
you know,
but these guys have made a living at, and maybe they have a pedigree that came from the DOW, right? Or
right, right.
they've got a lot of background there, but they're like, you know what? I know of a specific insight because I've been in maybe I was in the service myself or as a civilian, and I saw very unique needs the DOW has, and I'm going to build a solution for that and start a company around it.
Right,
And then they use their connections and contacts to kind of sell direct, right?
right.
But they have software, and if they're selling into Army, then Army's like, well, use our Cloud Army cloud that's based on AWS, but we'll make you an enclave there, and you can put your stuff there.
Right.
So that kind of leads to my number one, right? Is depending on who you are and how you approach this process, it can be really difficult to break into DOW, right? Like, especially if you're one of these broadly applicable clouds, right? Maybe you get pulled in because you're competing on a contract, or maybe maybe you have a good federal team that you've hired, federal sales team that knows how to get on the right vehicles and how to sell to DOW. But still, the barrier to entry there is pretty difficult. Just because it's a whole different language. It's a whole different, even what we're familiar with and how we got into it was a big difference in language and learning the impact levels and learning all that. It's a whole different basket of acronyms.
It is a whole new basket of acronyms for sure. Yeah.
That's kind of mine.
Okay. All right. So, for me, I've always really focused on how do we get the people past, or our customers past that first step, even ourselves past that first step. And it's very difficult to find that angle in, because if you don't truly understand the market itself or how they communicate, for example, if you don't have a .mil email address, they may not even talk to you initially. Do they trust you to be able to do business within that environment? So having that,
there's a lot of suspicion.
Yeah, there is.
If you're coming and knocking on the door.
and they probably should be, right? Because of the mission that they
Absolutely.
have. So for me, that's the number one challenge, right? Is trying to find that kind of, how do I even get into this marketplace? And before we even talked about this, I didn't even think that the challenge of, well, should I go like pure Army, or should I go pure Air Force, or should I go pure Navy, or should I do the DISA PA was even a part of the conversation,
Right.
Because I was always thinking about, okay, how do I get in there? Then how do I get a sponsor, right? So that's to me is my second challenge, right? So not only do I have to figure out how to get in, right, but it's really finding that sponsor inside of.
Did you read my notes?
I did not. Well, no, like I said,
mine's also sponsored.
That's good. Well, because I think if we were to say this, even during our previous FedRAMP conversations, the number two would be, the number one probably in that space was sponsor. But I think the Fed Civ market kind of is a little bit easier to understand, and the mission can be spread out a little bit easier because the financial systems and all that seem to be very, very similar in nature. So understanding that business and having that pipeline built of business and contacts and relationships, going to conferences, and all that, but then finding that person who is willing to step up and say, I will buy what you have, and I will also, sponsor your platform, so we can get a full-fledged certification authorization in the DoD space.
ATO.
Exactly, ATO in the government, the DoD space. It's very, there's some work they have to do. Maybe we could talk briefly about that, what they have to commit to, if that's probably your number two challenge as well.
Sponsorship by far. That was debatable whether that was going to be number one or number two, but And maybe some don't have it, right? So that subset of customers that have a niche because they've been on the inside, right? They probably have more of a carve out. They've got the relationships.
Right.
They're not going to struggle as much in this area, but typically they're going to go direct DoD RMF and not come through the DISA PA route.
If they have like a specific thing that the Army can use and maybe the Air Force can't, or the Marines can't, or the Navy can't, or Space Force can't leverage it. But, if you have a system that can be leveraged across multiple, the Army or Navy or Marines,
Well, it creates a problem.
it does.
And I actually get to that in my fifth, but I'll talk about that a little bit now. But it creates the problem of, like, if they go with the niche relationship that they have and they do DoD RMF it, well, then it's kind of limited the reusability
Correct.
of that,
Yep,
right?
Yep.
So it's like, yeah, you've deployed it for Army, but is it on the right networks for Navy to get to it or Air Force to get to it? If it's something that you want to sell broadly,
Mhm.
right, it can really limit your ability, or you have to, now put it in Air Force's cloud, right, and redo the RMF on it again, right?
Go through the entire ATO process all over again. Same testing, pay people to do all that
Yep.
as well. But
And then that just creates side effects for the DOW
right.
as well, right? Because now they're managing multiple ATOs. They don't know it, but they are
Correct.
across two different components. So
Or 3 or 4 or whatever.
however
right?
many times.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I personally think, there are other platforms out there that can help people with this as well, but they limit you on the kind of services they'll accept as well.
Mhm.
I think that can be a challenge. So, there are some platforms out there that can help people kind of get through that process and they kind of absorb you into their ATO. And there's nothing wrong with that if you can find, one of those platforms that'll help you with that. I
Right.
think there needs to be more platforms, out there that can do that as well. I know we have a platform and we have several IL4s, IL5s in it, but they come in and audit our entire stack every single time.
Yep.
So,
Even
find
though
here
it's
again.
the same stack.
Yeah, we're in that stage 2 perspective, right? The sponsor piece, finding that person or component that will
That mission owner
that mission owner that will say,
that
okay, I
understands.
see what you're trying to do here, and yes, I think this is a great idea, and move forward.
Yep.
So
Yeah. I mean that just points right back to sponsor being
Yep.
One among the
it still
biggest
is.
issues.
It still is. It's
It's
still
been an issue for us, even though we've got customers that have great sponsors
right.
and have helped us, pull us along.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
Yep.
I think that for me, my third is just understanding the process, because let me talk about the DISA process, and if you want to talk about some of the RMF process, I don't know if you
Sure.
want to talk in more detail about that. But on the DISA side, you actually have to go through 3 different audits, not 3 different audits, but 3 different processes. So you have to go through your readiness assessment first. You have to prove that you're ready in order to be allowed to come into the DISA process. So you have to do that readiness assessment,
which is really ready for a full assessment.
which is really ready for a full assessment. And then they have to review that package to make sure that you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to go through the full assessment, which was already done with the readiness assessment. It's going to be interesting to see how they handle it when the readiness assessment goes away from a FedRAMP, because I believe they use the same documentation for that process as well. So once you get through the readiness assessment, then you have to go through the full assessment. Then you get a PATO, and then you also have to go through the same process with the agency who is the mission owner of this as well. So you have to get your eMASS package submitted.
Yep.
So it's understanding that process. And then there's a lot of black boxes in that process as well. You turn things over and you don't know if they're making it through the process. It seems like they've gotten somewhat.
It took us a few times going through it before we started to understand all the different players involved, the different offices that you have to work with.
Right.
Just the BCAP connection alone is 3 different
3 different organizations that have to coordinate. And basically it's like, okay, ready?
And you're the
set.
coordinator, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. It's like ready, set, go, and then once it's done, it's done. It's pretty easy to do. The technology piece is real simple.
Yep.
The process to actually get through that entire process, I think, is quite difficult.
And I kept trying to find out who DoD Nick was,
Right?
but
Not Nick Whitley.
Is there a DoD Nick? Do you guys know?
Yeah, exactly. We might have a few of those in here. So the process, understanding that process, being able to get all the documentations written, making sure that you go through the pen test, making sure you get your full assessment done, making sure everybody has their I's dotted and T's crossed, and make sure, 100%, make sure if there's any last minute rule changes, you incorporate them also into your current package. Because we have seen that over and over again where rules come out and it's like, okay, they're due today.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, yeah, but this is a big change. Yeah. This is a big change for us.
NSS requirements.
NSS requirements. And there was something last year that happened to us last year.
Effective immediately.
Immediately.
And you're right at the end of an assessment.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So it's kind of hard to get that built in, not only from the assessor standpoint, but from our customer standpoint as well.
Yeah.
So that process and knowing that process can change along the way, and how do you communicate that to your clients and customers to where they understand, I can't predict that piece of it.
That was so that's really close to my third, but my third is kind of a side effect of the process, right? And it's the time to ROI.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's because of everything you just mentioned, right? It's because the process is fairly protracted, right? A lot of it's on the government calendar and the government watch, and there's it's limited what you can do to compress that, right?
And we have had a few government shutdowns over the last 12 to 14 months.
Yes, we have.
And there's just been a little bit of turnover.
And it turns out that not a lot gets done during those shutdowns.
You think?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Fairly impactful.
Fairly impactful.
Yeah. So, I think for a lot of customers, especially the small businesses that are really coming up with great innovations, they just aren't able to absorb that amount of time. They don't have that much runway to wait on the dollars that come from the investment to get there, right?
So do SIBRs and STTRs and OTAs help?
I think they do, but they don't defray the whole cost, right? They really, you really need a few customers in the pipe that are gonna go off to make it worth the cost.
Right.
In my opinion, it's very hard to have one customer that's going to pay for the whole process.
Right.
Right.
And also at the same time, how long did it take that process to be reauthorized this year? I mean, I think it expired on September 30th of last year, and it just within the last month, within the last 30 days, it's been reauthorized. So people who were planning on that, it kind of went away for a while. And to be honest with you, I was actually questioning whether
the SIBR program.
The SIBR program, it was reauthorized in the defense package, budgeting package. So it took me a minute or so to really truly believe whether or not it was going to come back or not. I didn't know. I knew that they might be pushing more people to OTAs. And not towards the SIBR program.
Yeah, it was really hard to understand if it was a priority or not. With the administration's been prioritizing focus on like PE firms and because they could make pretty big investments into key areas of defense and things like that. So we were thinking, does that mean that they're not putting as much emphasis on SIBRs and stuff like that? But fortunately, it looks like that's not the case.
Yeah. Although I did see an article published this week that was saying, I believe it was the Army, that was saying that they're really looking more for the whole system, right? The whole system, as opposed to the piece parts like they've done the SIBRs before, where they could carve out smaller amounts of money per customer or per vendor, who could then do some experimentation to see how it actually comes out. Because it used to be the SIBRs were really designed for competition as well, not just from a competition from a RFP perspective, but who can produce the best product for the least amount of money at the fastest time as well. And based on that, I don't know if they're going to be thinking about more about the prime contractor world, where you hire a prime contractor to go do something without the experimentation. I
Right.
mean, it's like, do you really know what that something is yet?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It takes some investment to get there and figure out, is this even viable, or what are the different pathways to make it happen?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So cool. Cool. So what is your fourth then?
So you want to know mine first.
Yeah, this
Uh,
time. They're
so
actually a lot more aligned than I think we thought about when we first started talking.
yeah,
Right? Yeah. But
they are in different ways, but
yeah.
it's so much just the way we think about it too.
Yep.
But,
Yep.
so my fourth was just managing the deployments. So like, and this is more of kind of when you're in the throes of the assessment all the way through to onboarding the customer and that kind of thing. It's a lot of our customers are a bit shell shocked at, well, now I've got a U.S. only enclave and I've got to manage this differently than I manage everything else because I've got developers all over the world.
Yep.
How am I gonna to manage this as a sort of a one-off deployment with different rules, different access control, and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So that was the one that I've seen customers kind of scratch their heads on, and I mean honestly, it's what gets us introduced to customers to begin with because that's part of what we do, right?
Yep.
We're used to operating in these environments and what it takes to do the right things to operate them correctly and compliantly.
So that is my fourth as well. U.S. persons, U.S. persons on U.S. soil. Because like you said, that's one of the things that truly has brought us into this space.
Yeah.
Not having the right people to be able to do the job. So this can be a challenge for us as well, not from understanding the skills, because we know the infrastructure. We know CI/CD pipelines. We can do vulnerability management, Kanban management. We do all this underlining, support services, managed services for the CSPs. It can be, in my opinion, a little more difficult to support some customers who have applications that they want us to support when they don't have run books, as an example, or if they don't have the right observability built into the system. So, and we can do that, but we just need to have that extra knowledge. There's a little bit more turnover perspective that needs to happen, to be able to bring us that capability to be able to do inside of their application stack. We do support several customers that way, but it is a little difficult to do because they might do a patch or they might not fully explain it to us what they've done, and then we have to go back in and support whatever what they've done. What we've also done is we've designed our system in a way that we can build a stack that's a little bit outside of the boundary, right? So they can have their non-U.S. citizens go into, but doesn't have access actually into the production environment. So they can actually bring things into a pre-configured solution that's very similar to what they have, and they can test whether or not that it'll work inside of
kind of work out the run books there.
Exactly.
And staging.
Yep. So.
Yep. Yeah, and some of our customers are of the scale where it's like we would never entertain handing over operations of the app,
Right.
and that's fine. In those cases, we build the enclave, we manage the security stack that we deploy and all those things. There's even some cases where, we've had a couple customers in that tier 2 category that are just too big for that.
Right.
And they want more control over the design and architecture up front. And in those cases, they're like, hey, we like the way that you did your SIM. Can you help us deploy it?
Right.
Or the SIM the way you did, and those kinds of things. So we get a lot of great feedback on. I mean, I can't imagine that there's any platform out there that's doing things at the scale that we're doing it, right? For the size customers that we're building for in a lot of these cases. But yeah, we've got some great customers.
Yeah, that's true. That is absolutely truth. I mean, it's fun to work with with them as well because they bring up unique challenges. I was one of my most famous sayings here at InfusionPoints is every customer we have is exactly the same but completely different.
Yep. Totally different.
Totally different. Completely different. So.
Well, and it's also made us think about the platform as being as open as possible, right? So, a big part of our design criteria was we don't want to force you into a certain deployment model. We don't want to force you into our dev tools or our dev stack. Bring your own because you've you've been most of our customers are big, and they've got their pipelines already established. They've got their tooling, and we can help them. In some cases, we have to substitute something out, but in a lot of cases, we can help kind of adapt what they have and make it work
Right.
for the way that they deploy into these DoD environments.
Which leads me to my fifth. So
Okay.
let's see if we differ here. It sounds like we did because it's like you gave a little hint to your fifth. And to me, it's the hardening piece of it. It's the leverage and having to leverage the STIGs, having to follow all those additional general requirements that's inside the GR requirements, right? It's pulling that hardening capability for the entire environment, and then a hardening environment for the individual OSs and containers. That to me is a huge challenge, because sometimes a STIG isn't built for a specific service or a specific OS or a specific database. So it's very difficult, to find the right tool to not only build and harden your environment for, but it's also very difficult to be able to scan it and prove it over and over again in an automated fashion.
Reliably, yeah.
Yeah, reliably, right?
Yeah.
So that's always a challenge. A customer choosing an operating system that there's not a STIG for, or maybe it's a version of that STIG or that version of that OS that doesn't quite have a STIG on it. So it's like, how do you prove that? And then how do you do that over and over again? And then telling people what STIGs are and why are they different than anything else as well, or finding commercial tools that can leverage that STIG compliance as well.
Yeah, I mean, a big part of this is the pain we felt, I think, working with the tier twos, right? Because they tend to be much more complex. Maybe they've got multiple images that they're using, and with a lot of built-in dependencies, right?
Yes.
And they realize that the number of sprints required to totally adapt to a different OS that is STIG hardened,
right,
it's just going to it's going to extend that timeline even further, and they don't want to jump into that, right? So yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot of different methods that we've leveraged to move away from that. Sometimes it's bringing in like a chain guard or a rapid forward or something like that that we partner with. A lot of times we can kind of get them over the hump, using our methods, right? Yep. Using the images that we provide, yep. Or helping them leverage the images that they use in a way that does meet the STIG requirements.
Yep. But it's always fun to explain this to our customers. To me, this is like, from a technical perspective, this is probably the number one challenge, is making sure everything's hardened to the right level of hardening, and then being able to build that in and then being able to prove that, over and over again. And trying to explain that to customers sometimes can be very difficult for them to understand the level of difficulty that is in this. And what we attempt and how we attempt to remove that risk is by saying, if you leverage these OSs, then it'll be much easier to prove this. And then you'll figure out how you can operate in this environment as well. So
yep. Things like Vader is helping a little bit with it. The change, some of the changing standards. But at the same time, we can't really rely on that yet for the DoD Correct. Side, right? So these customers that are kind of in between, a big focus area for us is helping them adapt not only to the FedCiv side and what's going on there, but have a very strong posture and stance.
How do you feel about that? I mean, on like supporting those kind of customers, especially.
I think it's our sweet spot. It's just what we do. Mm-hmm. I mean, number one, we're leaning into the innovations going on the FedCiv side, on the FedRAMP side. We've been very supportive of 20X and what the changes that are going on, the changes in the standards to Rev 5 that hopefully we'll see here coming up in June, right?
Yep.
I think we're all anticipating that one.
Yep. I think we got a preview of that the other day, and I think Tanner was telling us that there's probably not a lot of changes than what we've already known, so we're already moving right down the right path. So I think I feel good about that.
But yeah, I mean, right now, I think I can imagine anyone that's better situated than we are to help customers that are trying to navigate in between and trying to figure out. In fact, we picked a customer like this up that sees the 20X opportunity right in front of them, but also knows that they've got IL4 hanging out there as well, right? And IL5. So
Because they had that number one challenge, right? Or was it number two, right? The number two challenge is lack of sponsor, right?
on the Fed Civ side.
On the Fed Civ side,
But
right?
they've got probably a sales opportunity on the DoD side.
Right.
So how do they do this in a way that it all works together, right? And the way that we've built our platform was around Rev 5 and DoD SRG to begin with,
Right.
all the way up to high and IL5. And 20X is like, okay, let's flip the lens a little bit and provide a 20X view of how we're doing things in the environment, right? And in the same way, we could flip the lens for CMMC or other frameworks.
Absolutely.
As needed. So,
So what's your fifth?
so my fifth was different, but actually it kind of follows right along with what we just talked about. It's getting that second customer. So often, our customers have that one mission owner.
Yep.
And they get that one mission owner. But again, it's probably not enough of an ROI story within that first customer to really make everything worth it, right?
Right.
And I love it when our customers are really winning and they're providing their services to government. Government's happy about it, but they're also getting the ROI that they were looking for.
Right.
And I don't really consider our mission accomplished until our customers are there.
100% agree.
Yeah.
Because if they're not successful, then we can't be even claim success, right? Just because we help them get them over the hurdle of the ATO, ultimately they want to sell their services and make a profit on those services in the government space. It's great to be able to sell things to the federal government because they can leverage your service to do a mission, right? But it's also great that we have to be able to build that economic system and an ecosystem that can sustain people in their businesses, so they can train people and continue to innovate and drive new features and functions into the services. So, second customer, third customer, fourth customer. So you have to figure out that how is that balance, across the board. I like that a lot. That's why you got to be focused on the business here. Because if you're not focused on the business, if you're only focused on the functionality, if you're only focused on the ATO, and then all of a sudden, you got your ATO, then what are you doing about building your pipeline,
Right.
into here? So,
100%.
So, what do you think about? Well, thank you for entertaining me on the five challenges. I think they were pretty close. There's just slightly a different. Let's talk a little bit about where do you want to see this go? I mean, we've seen Swift come out. We've seen, the new CRMC come out. We've seen some other things come out from just trying to get the CATO come out. What other things would you really like to see the DoD embrace? So is it FedRAMP, like a FedRAMP 20X kind of thing? Try to go to the automation, world.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the future is automation, and I think that the way that the threat surface is changing so fast in the age of AI and agentic AI, I think it's going to be table stakes if it's not already. For us to move much faster on these things. I mean, I saw the news last week that Mythos was the first AI lab, or I'm sorry, Anthropic, but now there's a second AI lab that's has the capability to link the whole kill chain together with a 0-day very reliably now. So we're in this age of 0 days dropping and time to exploit just plummeting dramatically. So like in that kind of environment, right? We can't be pushing paperwork,
right?
We can't be pushing paper compliance.
So how do we get the incentives in place, though? From the DoD perspective, on the commercial, CSP's perspective, what kind of incentives do you think we need to have in this? Is it contracts? Is it milestones? Because think about the industry that's already built to support this current, FISMA RMF process. I mean, there's tons of customers that they pay millions of dollars a year just to maintain their ATOs, not only from a commercial, cloud perspective, but also from an internal perspective as well. So.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful for government to have an avenue for platform companies like us,
Mhm.
right, to be able to direct contract or at least get a sponsor
Right.
to get our platforms ATO'd, right? Because that would greatly reduce the amount of work of the amount of rework that we have to do, even for like our XPU 40 platform, right?
Mhm.
That same exact platform, the same, and I don't mean just a copy of it. I mean that exact platform is audited multiple times for the same controls, just because it's part of different ATOs.
And different agencies and different, organizations, right?
Yeah,
So,
or even let us take one of those ATOs and split out two records,
mhm.
and say, okay, Infusion Points has a record, and then our customers have a record, and then build from there.
And
But
then we could do a lot of inheritance, right?
correct.
Which saves money on time, from an audit perspective, which ultimately the government pays for, right?
Yep.
So if we have to go through multiple audits on the same stuff over and over again, because every vendor chooses a different 3PAO as well, right? So they can't swap and accept evidence from each other,
Yeah.
right? So it makes it very difficult, to kind of enforce that across the one platform,
Yeah. I mean, I really think DISA should look at, or really DISA can't do it on their own. It's got to be uh,
That's where the incentives come.
a force-wide effort,
Right,
right?
right.
It's got to be the DOW who's pushing this. But the original vision of the DISA PA was to allow you to get in a catalog for reuse, right? And that's the big thing that opened my eyes this year going to West, talking
Yes.
to a lot of companies that were in enclaves in various places, multiple RMF, ATOs, a lot of rework that's not even really accounted for. And then knowing that DISA catalog is out there, the cloud catalog, just has so few of those players in it.
It's mostly big, like if
It's the big
big
ones.
IaaS players, right? Or
Yeah, or the big like zero trust platforms,
correct,
like the
right?
Zscalers and those.
Yep.
Um, it's a shame that we're not pointing more back to, hey, if we're going to do this effort one time, let's make it at least where we can reuse it, right?
If you think about it, going to say the old FedRAMP process, it really the way they started to try to do this, and they were not 100% successful with it because I think they still got overwhelmed, but they had the agency authorization and they had the JAB authorization. Now, I'm not saying the JAB is a DISA authorization, but if you think about it from a context of you get your one authorization, then you can leverage it for multiple places, then
Mm-hmm.
that's where I would see like the DISA one be like a catalog of people that can leverage different cloud services, but the individual component can then leverage that system for their for their use, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe they do the authorization, and then that can also then be taken across the board. I don't know from a legal perspective because I haven't looked into it enough to understand that, but from a kind of what makes sense perspective, maybe that is a way that they can handle that as well.
I mean,
So,
that's really what FedRAMP always was
right,
before the legislation was passed. FedRAMP existed for 10 years
right before there was law.
before there was ever law,
Right.
and it was just a workaround, quote unquote, for FISMA,
Right.
right? It was like, okay, let's call it a PATO, so we're not saying you're authorized, but we'll have government sort of pre-review it, and we'll put it in a repository, and if anybody wants to look at that assessment, any agency can look at it and adopt it,
Right.
and grant their own ATO. It's the DISA PA is supposed to be that, right? But it's really only the big, like you were saying, the big tier twos or
Yep.
the big zero trust providers, the Palo Altos, and
Mm-hmm,
those big companies that have broken into that, and all the smaller niche players are just left to deploy wherever they're asked to,
Right.
and then that can't be reused. There's all that rework going
Yep.
on.
It's being paid by the taxpayers every single
Exactly.
time, right? So
Yep.
you know,
And then there's a few players out there that have developed a market out of this, right? But should it just be a couple players that are getting that
well,
market, or should it be?
it's also limited too, right?
It limits.
It can containerized type systems. If you have a 3-tier system, if you have a different a serverless system, they may not be for you, right?
Right.
So, um, All right. So if you were in the prediction market, would you want to try to make any predictions on how that kind of plays out with kind of some of the modernization that's going on in the Department of Defense? If you were
Uh,
a betting man, prediction market, kind of thing.
well, I'm a clinician, right? Like I like to look at what's actually going on, how things have happened in the past, and make judgments based on that, right? I'm optimistic. I mean,
There you go. I like that.
I
Yeah.
know there was Swift and some tea leaves that we saw, right? And then we've seen that sort of. There's not a lot of momentum yet around it,
Mm-hmm.
But I am hopeful that once things get worked out more with 20X, DoD will kind of have a 20X plus, kind of like what they did with FedRAMP,
Right. Right.
where it's going to require some extra things to do business in the DoD, DOW. But it's at least going to be sort of the same, at least the same framework, instead
Right.
of like a totally different framework.
Right.
I mean, what FedRAMP has done with 20X is like a complete top to bottom reimagining.
Yep.
And in a lot of ways it was needed,
Mm-hmm.
desperately needed, just because the FedRAMP process and I mean everyone talked about it just in hushed tones, and
Right.
we've been less hushed about it,
Right.
about it just being broken,
Right.
fundamentally not working, and certainly not approachable for a lot of the market that wanted to sell into federal.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think we're at the dawn of a new age of seeing seeing some promise and hope that that's going to be lifted on the Fed Civ side. There's going to be more opportunity to sell into federal. I know that based on the velocity of things going on the DOW side, with the war going on and just the focus of the administration on DOW, right?
And efficiencies and
Well, that and just the threat, the global threats, and what's going on with drones, and I mean,
right.
you name it. Right now, the need and the demand for innovative software and integrated with warfare systems and all is higher than ever.
Right. Right.
So I don't think
So the needs there.
the need's there.
It's not going away. So what we really need is some still some modernization and efficiencies and maybe some more transparency. Open it up and be able to look inside a little bit more. Be able to predict
Transparency,
things.
I think, would help a lot.
Yeah, and businesses, predictability is an important thing.
Yeah.
So being able to predict when you can have a software ready to sell to your customers, and not like all of a sudden, guess what? You got your ATO. Oh God, I sold 6 months ago, but I haven't sold again. And then there's the whole life cycle,
Yeah.
of procurement.
I've been having to keep this thing alive.
Right, exactly. Then there's the whole life cycle of acquisition that they got to keep up with as well. But yet it's like this you can't get too far because of the ATO. That ATO is slowing them down, and there's got to be some ways to pick up the speed there to make it a little bit more predictable. Especially when you have companies, not to brag on us a little bit, but I think we do a pretty good job in this space. It's our customers
Way better than average.
probably way better than average. You go through the marketplace. There's quite a few of the ones, that use our services to make it through. It really, a lot of it is just having that ability to be predictable, right? So that's what I would like to see, is to be a lot more transparent and to be able to be more predictable. So we can go to our customer and say, it's going to take you 6 months with our process to go through this. And we know that it's going to take 6 months.
Yep.
Yeah. I would love to say 90 days, right? I would love to say 30 days.
Yeah.
But if we could even get it to 6 months and be able to know that it's going to make it all the way through that process.
Yeah.
I think that would be very helpful. And that's not just on the DISA side. It's also once it hits, the mission owner side, right? Getting it into them to the eMASS, getting in and all the things that we need to be doing over there on that side as well. So, and then making sure that we can follow up with ConMon. But if we could get that down to some predictable timelines, that would be very helpful for business, because I think that's what business needs, is that predictability piece. And I think, if you have a platform already, and it and you can get brought into their ATO, right?
Mhm.
That can give you some predictability, but I think there's a lot of risk also in doing that for their ATOs, and then also for everybody else in those platforms as well. So, well, Jason, this has been a fabulous conversation.
And we're going to be talking more and more about DevTech.
Yes.
And in fact, we're going to be out at quite a few events.
Right? Yeah. I mean, you want to talk about a few of them? I mean,
basically every FCA.
Yeah, pretty much every FCA. I think we have a sponsor. Yeah, we're going to be at TechNet. We're going to be in Augusta, and then we're not actually doing a presentation at don't have a booth at SOF, but
Soft Week,
yeah. So we'll be there as well.
Yeah.
And then there's a few others I think we're attending as well. Several.
Yeah, Alamo Ace, I think we're looking at.
Yeah. So
Rise 8.
Yeah, Rise 8. Oh, Predacity. Thank you very much. We'll be at Predacity as well. Come August as well. So it's going to be
a Public Sector Summit.
Yeah.
Come party with us.
Yeah. DC
Tuesday night, right?
That's it.
Yeah, Tuesday night at the Marriott. We're gonna open up the what's the name of that room?
Oh, of course you would ask me right now. Anthem.
Yeah, behind the main bar.
Yeah.
It's where everyone goes after all the happy hours. We're having our extended happy hour.
This is an after hours, after a happy hour.
Yep. So. 8 p.m. to 12 a.m. Food and drinks. Join us.
That's it. It's been great. Thank you very much. I know you're not feeling great today.
No,
I
I'm kind
appreciate
of sniffly and
appreciate you. Yeah, appreciate you coming in and doing it up. Because I was just going to do my 5 challenges, and I think it works so much better with both of us doing them together. So definitely. I appreciate your time. And what do you say at the end?
I don't know the ending. Gary's giving the ending.
Oh man, I've not. So thank you for attending another episode of Behind the Shield. As always, it may not find. Caitlin's over here laughing at me because I get this wrong every time. You may not find just me behind the shield. Maybe it's somebody else from InfusionPoints driving the show. So thank you guys for your time. I appreciate the conversation. Cheers.
Thanks all.